Hey everyone, welcome to the Standoff. My name is Matthew Ho, the sports editor for Mustang News.
And I'm Sergio Romero, the incoming sports editor for Mustang News.
Congrats, Sergio, by the way, on that position. That's huge for you. But
thank you, I
today
appreciate
I'm going to have to beat you in this debate, man. Thank you everyone for joining us for our second episode of the Standoff. Just a reminder, if you did not get the chance to watch our debut episode, you can check it out on CP Mustang News on the CP Mustang News YouTube channel. Now, how this will work is Sergio and I will have 2 minutes to answer one question. We will give you our opinions and analysis, and there will be a total of 3 questions per show. Sergio, you ready?
Yeah, let's go. So first topic of discussion, let's take a look at women's beach volleyball. Cal Poly reached the Final Four of the NCAA tournament in Gulf Shores, Alabama. They were eliminated by the eventual champions USC, but that poses the question, is this Cal Poly beach volleyball team the most successful team in Cal Poly sports history?
I think the answer is clearly yes. I mean, they finished number 3 overall in the AVCA coaches poll. I mean, that's huge. And they reached the Final Four. I mean, what other team in our school history has reached the Final Four of the NCAA tournament? And I do recognize beach volleyball is a little bit of a different sport when you compare it to, like a basketball, when there's, 64 teams in your tournament and then, every school has basketball. Whereas beach volleyball, that's not necessarily the case. But at the end of the day, they reached the Final Four within the circumstances they were provided. They weren't even actually, I don't think they were top 10 ranked and coming into the season. They finished 31-7. They had the longest winning streak in the country at one point in the season with a 16-game winning streak, and they went on to lose to the eventual champions USC, and USC, they won the last 4 beach volleyball titles. So I don't really think there's even an argument here.
All right, well, let me give you my first example for the men's 2013 through 2014 men's basketball season. They didn't finish with a winning record in overall or conference play, but they went on a run and they handled teams. They handled the Big West tournament and they came out as Big West champions, beating CSUN in that final. So because of that, they got an automatic bid to the tournament, but they were a first 4 play-in game, and they handled Texas Southern, winning 81-69, and they advanced to the round of 64. They did fall to the number 1 seed Wichita State, but I mean that's kind of expected. Like that didn't happen until like 3 years ago. So I feel like that could be an argument there. For the best team, they pulled off multiple upsets. They went on a run. They won the Big West, and that we haven't made it to the NCAA tournament in men's basketball ever since then, or before that too. So,
man, we're talking about success. We're not talking about upsets. We're talking about success here, Sergio. I recognize, they made the NCAA tournament for one of the only times in our school's history. Shout out David Nwaba, by the way, only Cal Poly MBA alum. But I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I think Cal Poly Beach Volleyball has been the most successful team in Cal Poly sports history. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about actually Cal Poly athletic facilities. So currently, right now, there's a couple of different new projects going on. So obviously, we have the Comerford Pavilion at the Mustang Tennis Complex. That's being currently built right now, right behind the Recreation Center. You can see it's being built pretty fast and should be done at some point next year for the team to use. And then there's also the John Madden Center. This project, was announced in the 2022-2023 season, but faced numerous delays due to some construction issues, and the original timeline had that facility to be done by this upcoming fall, but that clearly does not seem like it's going to be the case. In fact, Cal Poly Athletics released a video on the day of the annual spring game, basically detailing a completely different construction plan, and that poses the question, Sergio, with these facilities in mind. Also, we've had baseball come up, we've had golf, have their facilities within the past, 5 to 10 years, basically. How will these facilities help the performance of Cal Poly athletics?
Well, I mean, it definitely brings the teams together in a sense. I know Mustang News did a story about the Comerford Pavilion, interviewed a lot of the tennis players and saying that it's a good thing to have all the players in one space and share a space and not share it with any of the other athletes. But I feel like if you're not putting the performance out on the field and developing players at the rate that they should be, I feel like recruits aren't going to come anyway. I mean, it's nice to be able to have these facilities and have the option to say with football, like, hey, this is like a film room. We have a film room. We have like nutrition stations and stuff like that. But unless you're actually like developing players and like sending them off to as high as the NFL, I feel like players just like aren't going to be interested in just coming here just because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see your point there, but at some point, we got to take that first step up. right? You need to bring in the talent in order to develop them, just because you look at the academic requirements, obviously again to Cal Poly are higher than a lot of the schools. Like if we're talking about football in the Big Sky, our acceptance rate at Cal Poly compared to Montana State or Montana is it's a drastically different way we're going about recruiting. But I think these facilities are the first step in bringing in those players that we can develop, like you're saying. So I think this is going to be huge for both our programs, and obviously women's tennis this year, they made the NCAA tournament. They've always been kind of upper echelon of the Big West. They finally got over that hump, but facilities like this is going to help the tennis team. For football, I think this is actually it's really going to be huge. I know they actually really changed the plan, but at the end of the day, they actually have a football dedicated facility, whereas before they weren't even showing recruits what our locker room looked like. Across all sports, that wasn't even just football. They just never showed teams the locker rooms or recruits the locker room. So having these facilities are going to allow recruits, to come see this, be impressed, say, this is where I can develop to make it to the next level, make it to, a higher level. And I think that's really important. Up next on our topic, we're going to talk a little bit about Cal Poly men's basketball. So, Mike DeGeorge got hired in the springtime, and they've been, ramping up the recruiting cycle in the past couple of weeks. So, earlier this week, the men's basketball team, according to verbal commits as well, announced the signing of two new freshman recruits and one transfer, excuse me. So number one from Caden Ward from Stockton, California. Number two, Peter Bandley from Team Royal Crown in Canada, and then a Division II transfer, Kieran Elliott, from Division II West Texas A&M. So another thing too is that at the same time when DeGeorge left, a lot of his players from Colorado Mesa entered the portal. So there's a lot of speculation that a lot of those guys can come follow DeGeorge here and kind of make up the rest of this roster. So Sergio, what do you think? Do you think Cal Poly men's basketball should bring in, should DeGeorge bring in recruits from his previous stop?
I think it's a no-brainer. I think they 100% should. Just having players that are familiar with the system and just the work style and like how practices are run and stuff. Just being able to have those players kind of just come in and immediately be leaders to your program, I think that's huge. And even with the type of offense that DeGeorge is trying to implement, like just being able to have that familiarity with the head coach and the staff, and just being able to have that and like have day-to-day not just all be on the coach, and like have like some player influence, and like even when they come, they can help with high school recruits as well. Like I can be like, hey, we made it to the Sweet 16 in Division II over here with DeGeorge, and now we're trying to do the same thing over here. So I feel like that there's a lot of different ways you can go about this, but bringing in familiarity is huge for a program, I feel like, especially with the new coach.
Yeah, I think the familiarity is definitely a strong point, but on the other hand, you do need to look at the roster for Colorado Mesa. Trevor Baskin, he was probably one of the most notable guys on that roster, just committed to the University of Colorado, Power 5 school. He was a Power 5 level talent, he's a really solid player, but the rest of the roster, they didn't really have any bigs on their roster. It was mainly guards, more wing times, and I understand that's how DeGeorge wants to play. I just think it's going to be interesting to watch next year, just like we might not have a true center on our roster, depending how things shake out. Right as of now, we don't have a true center on our roster. Our tallest, I think at the center position this year, they might be running, Aaron Price, Paul Bizimana, who were playing the 4 last year for Cal Poly, and who knows how are you gonna, those guys are gonna be equipped to guard a center from UC Irvine. I understand that's just kind of the trade-off they're making. They're going to play faster, more space on the offensive end, and sacrifice. You might not be able to contain, a Traore from UC Santa Barbara who just left the conference, but post-up bigs like that. So I just think that'll be interesting how that plays out. So maybe also bring in some sort of emergency big too, but they didn't really have that at Colorado Mesa.
Sure. Yeah, I'll leave it off with this though. The women's basketball was super undersized, and they had a lot of success this past year. So I'll just leave it at that.
This is also true, but they did have a center as well. Yeah, that's it for the standoff. Thank you for everyone for tuning into this episode. Like I said before, if you haven't checked in with our first episode, check out the CP Mustang News on YouTube. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Cal Poly Mustang News Sports. And Sergio, any last thoughts?
No, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.